Big Bear Nation? Welcome back to the homestead. So today we're here in my sewing room, brooder room, chick room, tortoise room, seed room, or just our bonus room, I guess, that we've over the years have turned into so many different things. But for right now, it is our seed room. If you notice behind me, we've brought in the planting bench that we did have outside. We had it outside in a spot where it was really sunny, and so it was really hard to get out there and be motivated to plant. So we had an idea, we cleared out this area and we brought this in so that I can work where there's a little bit of airflow and a little bit of shade, so I'm not baking in the sun when I'm trying to plant. Speaking of planting, it's getting to fall garden season. And since we didn't have a spring summer garden, we're doing our best to try and salvage the rest of the year and get in a fall garden. And for some of you, you might be thinking it's a little too late, but I wanted to talk to you today about looking at whether or not you can have a fall garden, and if you can, how you should plan for it. Now, the first step in doing any of that, the first thing that we did was to look at our plant hardiness zone that the USDA has put out. They break up every part of the country in zones from like 1 to, I believe, 9. And we actually fall in either 7B or 8A. We're right there on the threshold. And after the way that this year was in the summertime, I'm leaning more towards 8A than 7B. The next thing that you need to do is you need to identify what your first frost date is. Now, this can be a little confusing because everywhere you go, just about anywhere you look, there is no definitive date. What dates you will see, if it looks definitive, it's because it's like a 75% chance that you'll be at 32 degrees. Like, if you really look at it, it's not, like, it doesn't nail down a specific day. And that's because of the weather, right? It varies. But for us, tentatively, it looks like our first frost date will be somewhere around Halloween, October 30th, 29th. I think last year we were actually at the beginning of November, like November 3rd or something like that. So we need to be focusing on the last week of October to the beginning of November. Well, when you do that math, we have about 60 to 70 days left for anything that is considered a summer vegetable. So that's the next step that I would suggest that you do if you're planning on trying to do a fall garden, is to identify there's 2 types of plants that you can grow. The first one is going to be plants that mature rather quickly. Something that grows and is mature and ready to harvest like 40 days to 60 days, somewhere in that range. And the ones that pop off right off the rip are like radishes, lettuces, there's beets, beans, carrots, cucumbers, squash, well, not squash, zucchini, really, the summer squash, Swiss chard, kohlrabi, all of these type of things. They are quick to mature so that you can get in that last little bit of a harvest before the frost. And if for some reason it ends up on that, closer to the end of October than the beginning of November, you can always cover those up to protect them from a frost. And it shouldn't be very difficult because a bunch of those things you're gonna have in clumps anyway, so you'll be able to throw a sheet over them, throw plastic over them, whatever. The second type of plants that you're going to consider for a fall garden would be stuff that can tolerate frost. Now, there are some that are like champs when it comes to frost, and then there's others that they may wilt a little bit, burn a little bit, and come back. So you want to focus on both of those kinds. We're certainly not going to be trying to plant peppers and tomatoes and eggplant right now, right? 1, because they take forever, and 2, they're not frost hardy at all. So these types of plants are going to be like your brassicas. You're going to have your broccoli, cabbages, cauliflowers, Swiss chard, turnips, rutabagas, spinach, arugula, parsnips, those kind of things. Definitely your root vegetables, and then like Brussels sprouts too. So the broccoli and the cauliflower and the Brussels sprouts, those will all grow up in the leaves. A lot of those leaves will protect what's growing inside. So they're going to be frost tolerant. Now they're not necessarily going to be frost hardy, because if they get too much frost on them, it's going to damage the actual vegetable that you're growing. Now, what are the benefits of planting a fall garden? Well, the really big one, at least for me, is that in the fall and into the early parts of winter, you don't have as much weed pressure, so you're not having to pull as many weeds. So that's really a big deal, especially with root crops like your carrots, rutabagas, things like that, radishes. It makes it a lot easier to plant and not have to worry about pulling out a bunch of weeds. The second big thing is dealing with garden pests. Your pest pressure is a lot less during this time frame, because your squash borer, all the different types of beetles, all of those different types of things, they're on their way to planting for the winter time. So they're not doing as much damage to your plants when you're planting around now. And really start thinking about, they really wouldn't be starting to attack your stuff until the beginning of October. So by then they're really on their way into, digging deep, so they're not having to worry about the cold weather. Now, one thing to remember, if you planted in the summer, which we didn't, but if you did, you'll want to remove all of those plants that are, bolting, or if it doesn't look like you're going to get anything more out of them, go ahead and remove those. And then look at your soil, see if it needs a little bit of a kick, whether it needs some compost tea or just a little extra garden soil or something to give it a little bit more nutrients, because some of these, the soil you've been growing all summer and it's pulling all the nutrients out for the stuff that you've already harvested. So keep that in mind. If you're growing something that needs a little bit of nutrients, go ahead and add that in before you get to planting. Well, fingers crossed, we'll be able to get some seeds in the ground here after the rain passes. It'll cool down the soil a little bit and it'll be ready for us to go. Now, we've also got some seeds back here that we've started inside. So maybe, just maybe, we will have some vegetables to show for this year. Now, I hope this video encouraged you to look at your calendar, look at your frost date, and see if you might just be able to squeeze in just a couple more vegetables before the season is over. Now, if you liked this video, go check out this video over here about saving squash seeds. If you have any left over and you haven't saved squash seeds yet, make sure you do that, because we're not promised what the supply is going to be for seeds next year. Thank you for stopping by the Big Bear Homestead. God bless, and have a nice day.